Hello and welcome to this class on our second factor explaining the rise of the Nazis, and this factor is economic factors, a real significant contributing factor as to why there was context and the foundations for Hitler and his Nazi party to become popular during the early 1930s and eventually be given an opportunity to govern Germany from January 1933. So let's look at what these economic factors were. Now, as you are already aware, the period 1924 to 1929, when the German economy appeared to kind of pick up and improve during this era known as the golden years of Weimar Germany, a lot of that success in inverted commas was due to loans from the United States of America. These loans came initially in the form of the 1924 Dawes Plan, which allowed for private loans to make their way from the United States to Germany that would give the opportunity for the German government to invest in new businesses and new technologies, and it definitely assisted and helped the German people and German business in the second half of the 1920s. There was another desire, or a continued desire, to ensure that the German economy would thrive. We should bear this in mind that the Americans obviously benefit out of this relationship because the Germans are buying American goods with these loans, and these loans are eventually going to be paid back. So is the idea. But to continue this, the Young Plan of 1929 was set up to allow the Germans to get more investment from the United States. So during the 1920s, the German economy is very much built on American money. As long as the dollar is strong, as long as the American economy continues to do well, then there should be no problems in Germany. And Germany can continue paying back her reparations to France and Britain during this period as well, because of the money that is coming into the country. Now, we are going to focus on this event that is on the right hand side of your screen, right? This Wall Street crash, this groundbreaking event in history, which transforms the United States and Europe for a decade or so. However, before the Wall Street crash of 1929, there are already examples of economic frailty within Germany, and that is because of the drop in agricultural prices that really started to take hold in the 1920s, and that is because there was a glut in the market. Germany were producing grain, the Ukraine, Russia were producing grain, new countries like Australia and New Zealand were producing grain, the United States was producing grain, and all other types of farm produce. So there was just too much food on the market, and as you know, when there's too much of something, the price will come down. And now that might be quite good for consumers, maybe good for the working class, but it's not good for farmers, because the price comes down means that they are producing wheat as they have always done, but they are not getting the same price as they've got for it maybe 4, 5, 6 years beforehand. They still have the same mortgages to pay on their farms, so how do they pay that mortgage if their income is being reduced? The other reason as to why there's a drop in world agricultural prices is because of automation, and in one particular area of automation, the creation or design of the tractor. And tractors can obviously farm much more efficiently, much more quickly, so that leads to a further increase in the crops that can be produced, especially in Germany, especially in the United States, and this also drives the price down. So we should bear in mind, we should note that Germany, even before the Wall Street crash, has 1.3 million unemployed, and a lot of these unemployed are farm labourers who leave the countryside and try and find work in the cities. So that's the kind of pre-1929 situation. Things are not great. What I would say is that the period 1924-1929 the golden years did see some welfare reforms passed and some other kind of progressive policies implemented by the German government. One of these was the unemployment insurance scheme, and the unemployment insurance scheme could kind of cover roughly 1 million or so unemployed workers. So this is not a crisis because the government can pay for the upkeep of these unemployed workers. But that's going to change, right? And the thing that really changes it is the Wall Street crash, because when the American economy starts to go into real meltdown, and we don't have to worry about this fact right now, we don't have to worry about the causes of the Wall Street crash. If you are still here next year studying history, then we will cover American history and we will examine the Wall Street crash. The American economy goes into meltdown. American companies start to recall their short-term loans. America stops buying things from Germany. Other countries stop buying things from Germany, so Germany's exports decrease. If there's less money going into Germany, Germany can't produce as much anyway. There's less money going to the government as well when the economy starts to tank. So all of these factors are going to impact upon the situation within Germany. The global markets start to contract and unemployment becomes a major concern for the German government. Now, as I said, the unemployment insurance scheme could cope up to a point, but by 1930 there are 3 million Germans unemployed. So we've now got factory workers who are losing their jobs, in addition to farmers or farm labourers who had lost their jobs earlier on in the 1920s. The unemployment insurance scheme cannot cope with 3 million unemployed workers, so there has to be some type of revision of the scheme. The Chancellor in the late 1920s in Germany, the man who was elected in 1928 is Hermann Müller, who you can see in this picture here. Hermann Müller was a socialist. In fact, he was the only socialist appointed Chancellor by the anti-socialist, anti-republic, anti-democratic President Hindenburg. Hindenburg appoints Müller in 1928, probably because things are going okay within Germany at this point, and there's no sense of any type of radical revolution. There has been progress made in terms of German foreign relations, in terms of Germany's economy. So there's a little bit of stability during this point. The extremist parties of the Nazis and then the left-wing revolutionaries, the Communist Party, they are not doing as well in 1928, so that might explain why Müller is elected. He's also given the post of Chancellor appointed by Hindenburg because the Socialist Party are the largest party within the Reichstag, but they are not large enough to govern on their own, so this is a coalition government. The coalition government is made up of a range of parties, but the two main parties are the SPD and the DVP, right? The DVP is the German People's Party. The SPD are the Social Democratic Party of Germany, right? Or the Socialists. Now, the unemployment insurance scheme has to be altered in some way to accommodate these extra couple of million unemployed workers. And the question of the day was who should pay money to increase the pot of the unemployment insurance scheme. So the DVP would have the view that it should be the workers, the working class, should pay greater contributions. The Socialist Party, the representatives of the working class, disagree, and they argue that employers should pay greater contribution. The majority of the kind of cabinet was happy to go with point one, that workers will have to pay more. The SPD couldn't accept this, couldn't lay this burden on the working class. So what happens is Müller has to resign. He does go to President Hindenburg and asks Hindenburg for emergency decrees to pass a budget that might be of assistance to the working class, but Hindenburg turns him down. He does not allow him to use Article 48. When we move on to our next Chancellor, Article 48 is used constantly. So the first point to maybe take here, and the first thing you can maybe do here, is think about what we did in the previous lesson. Here is President Hindenburg with an opportunity to allow the democratically elected Socialist Chancellor Hermann Müller use Article 48 for real, genuine reasons to assist unemployed workers. He is denied that opportunity. Müller then has to resign. Does that maybe give us a clue as to how the ruling elites, i.e. people like Hindenburg, how they really thought of socialism and what they really thought of democracy? here was an opportunity perhaps to get rid of the socialists from government, and Hindenburg takes it, and as a result Müller is kind of forced to resign, and he's replaced in March 1930 by Heinrich Brüning. And the first thing that Brüning is going to have to do is try and come up with a new budget for his coalition government. The coalition government stays the exact same, except it no longer has the Socialist Party contained within them. So this is a kind of centre-right government that is now in place, and that is a bit more of what Hindenburg himself would have liked. We should remember at this point that Hindenburg is an old man, right? He's in his 80s by this point. His health is starting to suffer a little bit. He is influenced by a coterie of advisors. Again, most of these advisors are on the political right. One such individual is General von Schleicher. Schleicher, the kind of minister, if you like, for the army, he kind of liaises between the army and the civilian government, i.e. Hindenburg. And Schleicher is happy to get rid of Müller, or happy that Müller resigns. And therefore Brüning, Heinrich Brüning of the Catholic Centre Party, is someone that both Schleicher and more importantly Hindenburg have some confidence in. They think that he's going to be able to hopefully improve the economy, but also maybe slowly and steadily shift Germany away from a democratic society towards a more authoritarian society. Let's look at Brüning's time in office. First thing, maybe I should point out here actually before we look at Brüning, is the election results of this era, right? So we are going to come back to this in a moment, but the election results of this era are really we're focused on from 1928 through to March 1933. I shouldn't say March 1933. We're really interested actually up from September 28 to November 32. The March 1933 election we'll talk about in more detail in our next topic. Now you can see that although Müller is gone in 1930, the Social Democrats are still a very important party. The September 1930 election is going to be an important election. It's going to be an election which will determine how well Brüning has done in his time as Chancellor, right? So if he comes to office in March of 33, March of 1930, by September of 1930, has the economy picked up? Has there been more kind of political stability? These are the questions that Brüning kind of has to address and deal with. So Brüning has got a main priority, and that main priority is the economic crisis. There are banks going to the wall. We have got unemployment increasing. You can see that in the bar chart below. There is a real sense that there is no confidence within the German economy. So Brüning adopts a policy that he thinks will solve the problems, and the policy he adopts is deflation. That is, try and keep prices low, but also to achieve a policy of deflation, the idea is also not to spend any money. Now you might think that's wise because there was not necessarily any money, but the view was not to make things worse. In fact, make savings wherever possible. So you get, I guess the word that we would use in the 21st century for what Brüning does is not so much a policy of deflation, but we would call this the politics of austerity. So state expenditure is cut, the salaries of civil servants and teachers, etc. are all cut, reparations are postponed. That's not a bad thing for Brüning, right? The American government, under the President Herbert Hoover, passed a moratorium on reparations payments. So Hoover does them a favour, does the Germans a favour, and what this means is that Versailles is kind of being chipped away at, and Versailles is proven to be a problem. So maybe this isn't the worst outcome of the economic crisis. Brüning basically adopts economic measures that I kind of feel like they're punishing the ordinary German person. It's the working class, it's the poor farm labourers that are really struggling from these economic measures. Pay cuts are not what you need at this point. There are other factors as well that do not help Brüning, right? He comes to office at a time when there are other problems. You can see these other problems on page 5 of your documents booklet. which you can see in your own time. But I've included them, they're on my site, but I've included them here as well just so you can have a quick look now. This top little summary here gives us an indication of the additional problems that Brunei is facing. So the kind of problems are still really based around agriculture, right? The third line down tells us that in 1932, this is 2 years into Bruning's time as Chancellor, there are 18,000 farmers who have gone bankrupt. In addition to that, the economic depression has resulted in 50,000 businesses becoming bankrupt between 1930 and 1932, so we're getting the reasons for high unemployment. And the crisis deepened or worsened further in 1931 when 5 of Germany's major banks closed down, and in the process people lose their savings. This little diagram here gives us a kind of indication of the vicious circle that occurs when the economy is affected by the Wall Street crash. Again, you can look at this in your own time in more detail. Let's go back to Bruning. Does Bruning, because we've got a question to answer here, right? Our question is, why did the Nazis come to power, right? So we have to somehow link this to the Nazis. So, does Bruning take advantage of this economic downturn to implement policies that could be deemed to be non-economic? Okay, so I want to look at page 10, which you can see here. This is from a chapter by historian Victor Wangler. You can get the reference on my site. On this page here, we get a little insight into maybe the motivations of Bruning, his attempts to exploit the economic situation. So in the kind of top left-hand corner section of this document, we get information here about what Bruning did. Right, we've mentioned what we might refer to as austerity measures. So Bruning's government from 1930, they cut wages and salaries and benefits of government employees in an effort to balance the budget at a time of declining revenues. He hoped to use the economic downturn to gain a further reduction of reparations payments. So if Germany's saying to the world, we are struggling, then the world will say, well, good point, we don't expect you therefore to pay reparations. His deflationary policies were supported by industrialists, so by big business, who wanted to reduce social and labour costs, i.e. they wanted to roll back the welfare state, all the gains that had been made during the golden years of the Weimar Republic, all the kind of socialist policies that had been implemented under Weimar. And then says that Bruning's failure to resolve the economic crisis would eventually lead to his replacement. Well, that's not quite the case, right? That's part of the story, but it's a more complicated story than that, and we will come back to it. But I want you to highlight another section, or note another section, before we leave this page, and this is in the top right hand corner. So on the one hand, Bruning is trying to address economic problems but also take advantage of economic problems. On the other hand, we get a sign or a kind of clue as to what direction this new German government is going. Really, from 1930 to 1932, there is an argument that democracy is already dead within Germany. As soon as Müller resigns from the Socialist Party Chancellor, then there's a sense that Germany is moving towards a more authoritarian state, which would be desirable to people like Hindenburg and his advisors like von Schleicher, and also to industrialists and to the army, and so on. And these are the elites that we spoke about in the last lesson, who might like the idea of any type of authoritarian leader coming into power, providing that that authoritarian leader is willing to take the necessary steps to bring an end to democracy within Germany. But democracy has already been dismantled, arguably, during Bruning's time in office, and Bruning is meant to be a Democrat, right? He's a centre party politician. So the bit I want you to take a note of here is when it says in the top right hand corner, this is between March 1930 and the election in 1930, which comes in September. Bruning is really struggling to get his budget passed. His budget to cut social services, because although there are some politicians who will favour this, The Social Democrats don't, and that's a major issue, right? And the small Communist Party group are not going to favour it either. So unable to gain parliamentary approval, this is the top right hand corner, unable to gain parliamentary approval for cuts in social services, Bruning persuaded Hindenburg to enact the new budget by decree under Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution. And you should all know what Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution is. It's something that you should have read about back in History A. And just for those of you who don't know, it's the act or the article that allows the president, in this instance Hindenburg, to basically push through legislation without the Reichstag having any input. So it's the kind of temporary cancellation of democracy to get a law passed. It was never designed in such a way to distort or undermine democracy, but that's the way that it was used under Hindenburg and Bruning. It then says, as the government increasingly relied on its emergency powers in the months that followed, this is under Bruning, the parliamentary process in Germany became virtually defunct. Defunct meaning dead, basically. German democracy may have already have been on its last breath a year or so before Hitler came to power. From 1930 to 1932, only 5 bills were passed by majority vote in the Reichstag, i.e. in a democratic way, while during the same period the government issued 60 emergency decrees, i.e. Hindenburg and Bruning's cabinet concocted policies that they would like to be passed or ideas that they would like to have accepted, and instead of going through the normal channels, which takes time and which could lead to the rejection of these ideas, they ignored all that and just used Article 48 again and again. So why did the Nazis come to power? Well, because democracy is already on its knees. Why does maybe Hitler become Chancellor? Because he could be that authoritarian leader, anti-democratic leader, who could provide the mass support for a new type of government, a new anti-democratic type of government, because the Nazi vote increases dramatically during this period. I just want to go back very quickly to the slides. Bruning, right, as I said, will eventually be replaced in 1932. Right, the reason he is replaced in 32, he's not replaced by Hitler, right? That's Hitler's 3 chancellors away from this point. He's actually, if you read the little section on page 15, he's actually replaced not so much because of his failure to sort out the economic situation, but more so because he was upsetting some of Germany's wealthy landowners by threatening to take away from them land that was unproductive, and the idea was to place unemployed workers and farm labourers on this land where they might be able to plant crops and so on and so forth. And that was seen as being, according to some wealthy farmers, agrarian Marxism. So Bruning kind of goes too far in his state involvement or his desire to intervene at this point, and Hindenburg, the old aristocrat himself, removes Bruning from office in 1932, and that's what you see in this little top left hand section of the chapter of the article. So we have a kind of question to ask here, or to focus on, and that question is, how do ordinary people, how do working class people respond to the economic problems, and why does this have anything to do with the Nazis? Right, so we can see in this table here that Nazi party membership steadily increases. Look at it in 1926, right, long before the Depression, it's 1920, it's 17,000 in 1926. In 1929, it shoots up to 120,000. Now, that's Nazi party membership, right? What about the vote? Let's go back to the election diagram we've got here, this table. Here is the Nazi vote. Here's the Nazi party down here, the NSDAP, and you may want to take a note of this or write it down. In 1928, pre-depression, their vote stands at 2.6% of the entire electorate, right? People are not voting Nazi. Simple as that, right? Then we have this economic crisis in 1929, and the Nazi vote shoots up. Now, why it shoots up is something we'll come to in a future lesson, right? We might touch on it a little bit now as well. But it shoots up to 18.3%. No other party has that remarkable increase. Not one other party. The Communist Party at the very top go up by a few percentage points, but the Nazis are going up by close to 16 percentage points. They are now, in 1930, after being a political irrelevance, the most successful party of the 1930 election and the second largest party in Germany. That is why Hitler becomes possibly a bit more attractive. It doesn't mean there's a rush or a race to appoint Hitler as Chancellor. In fact, there's not. The opposite happens, as we will see in 1932. Hindenburg and von Schleicher don't like Hitler, they don't like the Nazis, they see them as being uncouth and violent. They do not want to appoint Hitler, but they can't get rid of him, so they have a dilemma. How can they use Hitler but not necessarily put him into the post of Chancellor? Now, why do the Nazis arguably benefit from the economic depression? Why do they benefit? Is it what they're saying? Is it what they stand for? We'll come to some of those points, as I said, in future lessons. But at the moment I just want to focus on the last little line of this top section here. And this might give us a clue as to why the Nazis come to power. So, 4 lines from the bottom, it says, so obviously this is a continuation of a discussion of the economic crisis. In addition, millions of other people were affected by these job losses, right? So it's not just if you lose your job you're affected by the depression. You're affected by the depression if you think that your job might be the next one to go. You're affected by the depression if your social status depreciates because you have less income, because you've had a wage cut, right? So members of working class families are hit by depression and they often lose their jobs. And traders also suffer as well because there's less demand for their goods, so they make less profit if they can stay in business at all. But then you've got the middle classes, right? Lower middle classes and the middle classes who sometimes have jobs in the professions, who might have jobs within local government, they might have jobs where they have their own little workshop, their own little business. Their fear is that they could be next, right? So that last line says, even those who managed to keep their jobs had their wages reduced or lived in fear of losing their jobs. The key word here is fear. Undoubtedly, one of the reasons why the Nazis receive votes is fear. One of the reasons as to why fascism does well anywhere in the world, whether it be back in the 1930s, Italy, or Spain, Germany, or in a more kind of present day form, is fear. And it's the fear of people maybe losing something that they have always had, or fear of losing something they cherish. That might not necessarily just be a job, it might be this so-called way of life, or a fear that their, in inverted commas, their culture is under threat. That is what can often result in people voting for fascist forces. So fear is crucial. Let's jump now to this final slide, where I've given you a quote from two places. One is from an individual called Theodore Abel, who I'll touch on in a second, and then at the bottom we've got a quotation from the historian Ian Kershaw, one of the best historians on Nazi Germany and Hitler. But I'm going to read this primary source first of all, right, from Abel. Now, Abel is somebody who joins the Nazi Party, and in 1934 we get a real insight into why he became a member, why he voted Nazi. And that's because an American sociologist actually did some research in 1934. So before things get really crazy in Germany, before we start to see the kind of totalitarian state at work, there was an opportunity for this American sociologist to go into Germany, and she interviews Germans and asks them why they voted Hitler, why they voted the Nazi Party. You know, the foreign press are still welcome in Germany during this period. And she got some pretty interesting responses. So we get almost a kind of an honesty that you might not get later on in the Nazi period when people are scared to voice their true opinions. So this guy makes the following statement, and this following statement, I accept it's just one person's viewpoint, but it might give us an idea as to why the Nazi Party do well as a consequence of the economic depression and the economic crisis that follows it, that follows the Wall Street crash. So Abel says, the terrible burden of the breakdown threatened to bring all economic life to a standstill. Thousands of factories closed their doors. Hunger was the daily companion of the German working man. So German people are desperate, right? The government carried its measures against the public so far that many an honest working man had to resort to theft to obtain food. So the government did not do enough. This is really more a reference to Browning's government than it is to the very short-lived period when SPD under Mueller were in government. So this is really more about Browning. So there's theft, but not just kind of justified theft for food, but burglaries take place too, becoming daily occurrences, and the police had their hands full protecting citizens' property. As for me, like many another, I had lost all I possessed through these adverse economic conditions. And so, in early 1930, I joined the National Socialist Party, aka the Nazis. That's, I think, a really good insight into the mindsets of German people who vote Nazi. It's fear. Things have got so bad, but things could also get worse. And here's a political party that are saying, we will make things better. Now, I know all political parties say, we will make things better. Here was a non-mainstream political party with different ideas, with a different style, with a different vision, who were saying, we will make things better. This guy, Abel, does not join the party, does not vote for the party for anything to do with anti-Semitic reasons, nothing to do with the Jews, nothing to do with German ideology, not even anything to do with German propaganda by the looks of it. It's purely because he's lost faith in the government and he thinks that the Nazis will offer something different, i.e. they will offer hope. And this is why I want to quote Ian Kershaw. So according to Kershaw, this source of Abel and many others offer a glimpse into the type of psychology and motivation that were beginning to drive thousands, predominantly male and for the most part young, to join the Hitler movement, right, the Nazi party, as the storm clouds were gathering over Germany in 1930. So the Nazis offer hope. They offer vague promises, vague policies. They aren't always clear, as we will see in a later lesson, exactly what they intend to do to improve the lives of people who are affected by unemployment, but they do offer hope, and that hope comes from fear of what will happen to these individuals. So what were the Nazis offering? The hope of a new type of society, a society in which the little person, the little man, would not be the continued victim of big business or the Marxist labour leader. Sounds actually quite relevant to the world we live in today. A society, so false promises thrown out to ordinary people. A society in which status would no longer determine one's success in life. A society that would be based on the national community rather than class division. So it's not necessarily about race initially, it's just this idea that social class, industrial relations, disputes, all of these things bring the nation down. What the country needs is to be together during this period. So social class is not important, national identity is, and that did give people hope. It's why people voted for the Nazi party, who were an ultra-nationalistic political movement. However, to suggest that the Nazi movement was purely based on idealism would be a gross error, right? And that's what you kind of get from these questions that I've asked. It's what you get from the Abel source. It's not that people joined the party for reasons that were, I guess you could say, completely to do with optimism. Omitted from the source above were negative comments about the Jews and the communists. And the Nazis, the main way that the Nazis got people to come to them was because they used fear and hatred. They tarred all socialists and communists with the same brush. They said these are like Russian Soviets, you can't trust them. Jews were all deemed to be the same, and a group that had to be viewed with great caution. Hitler and the Nazis did not make a big deal about anti-Semitism in an explicit manner at the time of elections, because they didn't want to upset respectable elements within German society. So they downplay anti-Semitism, hence why it's not a real reason as to why people vote for the Nazis. But what they do cleverly is they focus on anti-socialism, anti-Marxism, anti-Weimar settlement, anti-Versailles settlement. And once you get a population to accept all of those things, then it might not be as difficult later on, when the Nazis do come to power, to get them to accept some of their other much more vile ideas and policies. So the reason why this bar chart in the bottom or the right hand side of the slide increases dramatically with Nazi membership. The reason why the Nazi vote increases, as I said, from 2.6% to 18.3% is because the economic depression puts people at their lowest ebb, and when you've got people saying, like Hitler, we will make things better, and we will make things better because we're going to offer you hope. And how we come to making things better, it's not 100% clear, but as long as you vote for us and you don't vote for all these old political parties who have caused all this chaos, then your life will be better. And that's it. The next lesson we will focus on will be on who the Nazis were, and we'll start to look at this ideological principles of the party and the policies that they suggest. There might be some policies that do encourage people to vote the Nazi party, and that's what we'll do in the next lesson. But before then, I want you to kind of consolidate this information on the impact of the economic crisis, and you can do so by looking at the relevant material on my site. Thank you.